Today, I'd like to talk to you about cognitive dissonance. A lot of you have probably heard that term said often, but what does it mean? The best way I could explain it is to say people have core values and core beliefs that they agree with, and when something new that runs counter to that comes and shows them that they're not living maybe true to their core values, it causes discomfort, and the idea that they should change is too overwhelming, so that they'll either minimize the new evidence or discount it outright. So it's almost like living in denial of true information or new information. A good example would be we teach people at a young age to be compassionate, especially we teach children to get along with other children, to have respect for the elderly. Empathy is something we build into children and eventually into society. That is a core value and belief I think that a lot of people hold. They would see themselves as a compassionate human being and empathetic and decent to all living creatures and to all people. But then when it is shown to them that indirectly they might be supporting things that are not compassionate, that are maybe even cruel, well, that causes maybe guilt or shame or at least discomfort at the very least, right? And so I guess consciously and subconsciously, they may have a choice to say, I accept this new information as fact, and I'm therefore going to change how I go about things. Or they could say, I hear what you're saying, I understand it, but I don't think that's good enough reason to change my actions, even if it does run counter to my core beliefs. So let's say one was exposed to a video showing somebody how, I guess, milk is made or meat or whatever, and it shows some pretty intolerable cruelty, so much that you couldn't even watch the end of the video. So you know for a fact that it is going on, and it's just one of many videos. So you have to rationalize to yourself, I don't agree with pain and torment, especially to anyone that can't defend themselves. And that is your core belief, but you also appreciate the fact that you enjoy, I guess, dairy or meat or whatever it might be, and it's such a big part of your life that you're not willing to give it up, and that's understandable. But instead of saying, you know what, I understand that it's cruel and it's wrong and whatever it is, but I enjoy it, you you may say, well, that doesn't really actually happen, even though you did actually see it happen, and you minimize it, say, or you could even go take a different tack and say, well, it's an animal, so what does that matter? Or it matters less. But compassion and empathy isn't reliant on the subject. Basically, it's the person who has compassion or empathy. It should be a universal quality. So if you see something that is in pain and you're a compassionate person, it shouldn't matter that that thing is not a human. If you know, because pain's pretty universal, and we know what cruelty is, and we know that we wouldn't want cruelty, and we try to avoid cruelty, and we try to avoid being cruel. But when we know cruelty is happening and we're benefiting directly from it, and we don't want to give up that thing, it's really hard for us to, rationalize that. So that causes a certain amount of cognitive dissonance. You feel free to say, that example is a poor example. You don't agree. I'm okay with that. I'm willing to, take in other people's points of view on the matter. And if you want to write a comment, feel free to do so. I'm not trying to be controversial. I think that's a pretty broad example, but a pretty institutionalized and entrenched example in society where we talk about compassion, we talk about abuse, we talk about cruelty, and how they're all universally considered bad things. We try to advocate. We tell each other to be upstanders, not bystanders. And then when we see it happen on a daily basis on such a large scale, and know that, there's quite a process for us to, eat the food that we eat. I understand, people. It jumpstarts other conversations like, is there a better way to eat meat? Like raise meat? Maybe factory farming isn't the best. So you can have other conversations after that. But I think the jumping off point is that the way things are now, not that they have to be this way, but the way they are now is the dairy industry, the meat industry is intolerably cruel to huge swaths of animal kind, and it's doing it out of efficiency and treats them as products and has no regard for their pain, their suffering, or even, the mental trauma that I guess the workers must eventually face being desensitized to this day in and day out. So it's a lot to unpack, and I understand that, but I really don't. I think it's hard to deny that there's cognitive dissonance going on here. And if you feel that I'm wrong, that's fine. I appreciate that. I'm not a hardliner, but I'd be interested in seeing what other people's take is on that matter. But I think, the best universal example for cognitive dissonance right now is, we as a society and we as a people generally think of ourselves as kind and considerate. And yet, indirectly, a lot of times we support things that are far from kind and considerate and decent. And we know it, but we don't want to, confront it head on. So we'll say, oh, well, what would you have us do? Not, just eat grass for the rest of our lives? Or, oh, but what about think of all those workers, And those are other conversations. And those are conversations one can have organically and unpack it logically. But I think the jumping off point is still that there's a lot of cruelty that goes on in these industries. We know about it. No, we know about it so much that we don't want it videotaped. We don't want it reported. It actually makes us angry that somebody would dare confront us with this information. That's how entrenched, I guess, our cognitive dissonance is. And I know I'm the same way. Like, I'm not immune to it. Everybody, I think, has a blind spot. And I just feel like maybe that's society's most prominent blind spot when it comes to cognitive dissonance. Anyways, feel free to comment. And if you think I'm wrong, I'm more than willing to discuss the matter. You have a great day. I hope this was a little bit helpful. Bye.